Folks, coming up next on the inaugural edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, drama on Capitol Hill as Senate Democrats and Republicans clash on the first day of Trump's Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Kristen Clark of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, who was in the hearing room, will join us live. A black woman who was mistakenly voted in Texas is headed to prison. Yes, prison. She and her attorney are going to join us live as well. He has picked up the mantle of Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. The Reverend Dr. William Barber will join us live to discuss that and why it's time to end voter apathy, especially among black folks headed into the midterm election. We'll also recap the homegoing celebration of Aretha Franklin and discuss why her family is blasting the eulogy delivered by Atlanta pastor Jasper Williams Jr. Plus, Colin Kaepernick and Nike, they've got conservatives in an uproar over making him the face of Nike's 30th anniversary of their Just Do It campaign. And of course, Black Twitter will be on fire tonight for the first night of BET's miniseries on Bobby Brown. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go. All right, folks, and so we want to go ahead and get the show started off by talking about, of course, the big day on Capitol Hill, and that is Brett Kavanaugh, his hearing. Now, Republicans, of course, they screwed President Barack Obama by not holding a hearing for Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland, so it's pretty hilarious listening to Republicans today talk about fairness in the hearing of Kavanaugh. It was loud, it was raucous, as a number of people, some 61 people, were arrested who interrupted the hearing. Now, we hope to talk to one of those protesters later in the show, but first up, of course, Kavanaugh spent 12 years on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, also served in the administration of President George W. Bush, and despite his assertion to rule in an impartial way, civil rights groups have said he is a right-wing ideologue who will be a clear and present danger to African Americans, voting rights, civil rights, and a woman's right to choose. Now, again, Democrats kicked off this hearing, of course, sparking all kinds of drama, challenging Republicans on why they are holding back thousands of pages of documents of Kavanaugh's time in the Bush administration. It's here what we'll say it today in the hearing. All right, folks, so we're going to have some of that sound a little bit later, but let's go right to Kristen Clark. Of course, she's the president and executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. So, Kristen, you were in the room. So, first of all, tell us, what was it like? Because off the bat, Democrats jumped right at Republicans, a clearly coordinated effort to challenge them on why they won't release his papers.
That's right. The tone set at the beginning for this hearing was really critical. I mean, we come into this hearing knowing that they are proceeding despite the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of documents from this man's time in the White House that have not been produced. So I was really happy to see Senator Harris, I think, was the very first one to interject. Senator Booker, Senator Coons, Klobuchar all quickly followed and really raised questions about why are we here? Why are we proceeding when they don't have the materials to really vet Brett Kavanaugh and determine whether or not he is qualified for a seat on our nation's highest court.
All I kept hearing Republicans, I hear, of course, Chuck Grassley of Iowa, who was the chairman, keeps saying that, oh, these thousands of pages, they're more than the last 5. But the reality is, this is a different type of nominee.
That's right.
And so when you hear 10% of his paperwork, I mean, this is for the Supreme Court of the United States, a lifetime appointment. There are only 9 Supreme Court justices. And so essentially, they want the American people to say, oh, no, we've looked at it. He's fine. Just go ahead and vote.
That's right. And it's been a total double standard, because when you look back at the nomination of Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, the standard has been 100% disclosure of documents. Jeff Sessions himself protested and threatened to delay the hearings, not participate if they didn't turn over all the documents from Kagan's time in the White House. And they did. But instead, what we're seeing is something we've never seen in our country's history. The Trump White House invoked executive privilege and basically said that they can't turn over a big chunk of Kavanaugh's documents. It's the first time this has ever happened in recent history. And what was remarkable is he's invoking the privilege from documents from the Bush era. It really leaves you feeling like there is something they are hiding. There is some kind of a smoking gun that they know will be uncovered that will complicate this man's path to the Supreme Court. And it's why Senator McConnell apparently didn't want him to be the pick, because they knew that he had this long paper trail and that it wouldn't be easy to race him onto the court. And so they found another way by changing the rules of the game. And it's unfortunate. Of
course, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey was sharing his thoughts in terms of about that. He was one of the folks who was really putting pressure on the Republicans. So here's what Senator Cory Booker had to say.
And this is not an attempt to delay. This is an attempt to be fully equipped to do our constitutional duty, which everybody, Republicans and Democrats on this committee, take seriously. It is very hard to perform our role of advise and consent when we do not have a thorough vetting of the background of the candidate in areas which the candidate himself has referred to as the most formative part of his legal career, where he himself has talked about how important this period of his life is. We're denied the full vetting. And, sir, this is not something that Democrats are asking for. I remind you that you yourself asked for a limited set of documents for when he was in the White House counsel's office. You yourself set that standard. And even on that limited standard, sir, we have not received the documents. And then even the documents, we've received 7% of them. Almost half of those have been labeled committee confidential that cannot be put before the American people, which further undermine and inhibit our ability to ask questions to thoroughly vet this candidate and advise and consent the President of the United States. So, sir, just on the basic ideals of fairness, the traditions of this body, we should have a thorough understanding of the nominee that's put before us so that we can vet them. To go into this hearing without those documents is an undermining of the constitutional role to which we have all sworn an oath to uphold.
So what I'm trying to understand, the argument the Republicans are making is that that you got enough. That you got enough, that you have his rulings, that's fine. But and then, of course, they say he was a staff secretary under President George W. Bush, that he was pretty much the person who was delivering paper, as if he didn't weigh in on any topics. And based upon other reporting, he gave his opinion on a number of subjects.
Oh, no doubt. And he worked shoulder to shoulder with President Bush in two capacities, not just in the White House counsel's office, but also as staff secretary, where he likely took up issues like hate crimes and torture and all kinds of civil rights issues. At the end of the day, this Supreme Court nomination has enormous consequences for African Americans in our country. Justice Kennedy was not a reliable friend on civil rights issues, but he was a critical swing vote in a number of key civil rights cases on fair housing, affirmative action, marriage equality, and more. With Brett Kavanaugh, we're going to get somebody who will hijack the court and really turn the court to the right. We will see revisiting of all kinds of precedents when it comes to civil rights cases that impact our lives as African Americans and people of color in this country. And the way that they're doing it by hijacking the American public and hiding documents from his time in the White House, I think means that if he gets confirmed, that he will have a cloud of illegitimacy that hangs over him during his entire term on the court. I am really grateful. There were two notable things about today. Senators Booker and Harris were absolutely phenomenal in speaking truth to power about civil rights issues and why this nomination matters for us. The protesters in the room today were notable. There were protesters interjecting at every phase of the day today. There were probably a few dozen people who were violently pulled out of the room, who were talking about the fact that they have pre-existing conditions, that they experience discrimination, and that they feel that they are in the dark, that the public is in the dark on this nominee, and urged every senator in the room to vote no. So it was a really powerful day. I hope that the American public is paying attention. A lot is at stake with this nomination.
All right, Kristen Clark, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And of course, you'll be in the hearing room. Yes. We'll be talking about this obviously all week until the hearings are over. Again, earlier we were talking about the protesters. Some 61 people were arrested today, and one of those folks is Linda Sarsour. Of course, you know her for her work with the New York Justice League, and of course very much involved with the Women's March, one of the co-organizers. She joins us right now. And so, Linda, you were one of the folks who were arrested. First of all, why did you feel it was so important to go to that hearing today, for you to express your viewpoint, and for you to eventually be let off in handcuffs?
I'm here right outside Senator Chuck Schumer's office. That's where I'm talking to you from. And I was the first protester to stand up and say that this is a travesty of justice, that this was a mockery of the American people and of democracy. I stood up because I'm Muslim American. I'm a woman. I'm a daughter of immigrants. And I know that this administration is trying to implement their white supremacist agenda, even through their Supreme Court nominee. Brett Kavanaugh would be a disaster for all of us, people of color, Black people, on issues of civil rights, on voter rights, on immigration, on surveillance, on women's right to choose. So I couldn't just sit back. I have 2 daughters, I have a son, and I was going to tell them that I stood up and did everything that I could. And I'm so proud of all the protesters who were people from across the country, including states like Alaska and Maine, from very important states with potential swing votes there, on Susan Collins and Murkowski. So we're hoping that something happens. We're also here asking Chuck Schumer to basically ask his members and whip his people to boycott. Why would you give legitimacy to a man like Brett Kavanaugh? Why would you even give legitimacy to Grassley and this lack of democracy, no transparency, no accountability? So we're here. You know us very well, Roland. We're not going to sit back and be silent. We're out here. And I'm very proud of the 61 people who got arrested.
And again, Linda, you have folks who are saying that Democrats need to be a lot tougher. Frankly, they were not as adamant when President Barack Obama appointed Merrick Garland, even though I also argue vehemently that he should have appointed a black woman to the Supreme Court that would have put a different set of pressure on Republicans to at least give that person a hearing. And so pretty much folks are saying, look, Democrats can do whatever they want to. It's a guarantee that Kavanaugh is going to get confirmed. And so to the people who say you're wasting your time, what do you tell them?
This is not a waste of time. We were able to raise awareness amongst the American people. There are videos that are going viral that are allowing people to pay attention to their senators, both Republicans and Democrats, seeing who's going to put a vote on Brett Kavanaugh. The vote for Brett Kavanaugh is a vote against women, people with disabilities, people with pre-existing conditions, immigrants, I mean, all of us. And so this is a message for the 2018 elections and the 2020 elections, and it's not a waste of time. We also know that there are ways around this, that the Democrats boycott and forced to adjourn these hearings. And the Republicans have done this to us, Roland, so many times. Why are we not asserting the same power and the same rights? And our elected officials are accountable to us. So we're not just here to stand up to the Republicans. We're here to stand up to the Democrats to say we need to be more bold. This is not about just rhetoric and little viral videos of you saying things that you think are important. This is about you actually taking action. That means not showing up to the hearing and getting all of our Democrats to unite together and say that this man is not a legitimate Supreme Court justice nominee, and let's move on and let's not take this vote.
All right, folks. Linda Sarsour, we surely appreciate it. Thank you so very much. We will have you back on the show. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, time for us to go to our panel to break this thing down. Joining me on my far right, actually, I'm sort of in the middle, so right in the far right, we have, of course, Spencer Overton, President and CEO for the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. Of course, we also have Liz Copeland. Liz, of course, she's with the Urban Conservative Project. And, of course, we have Dr. Greg Carr, Chair of Afro-American Studies Program at Howard University. Glad to have y'all in the house. Liz, you're the resident conservative. I'll start with you. Republicans are saying, look, you got enough papers. You got enough. But
half a million.
Yeah, 500,000. But that's sort of like saying if Sotomayor had 20,000 papers and you got 99% of her papers, but we're going to give 500,000 to you, that's still only 10% of his papers. I mean, I'm just saying, shouldn't you at least have a better view of that? I mean, that's 90% that you're not seeing. That's a hell of a lot of papers.
You lost me on the math. It's only about 42,000 papers from his time as secretary, White House secretary, that were in question. My understanding, those are the ones who were
last night.
Hold on. 42,000 papers,
right?
And they released last night.
Yep.
And
a day before.
Y'all had enough time to look over 42,000 papers.
Right.
And then Chuck Grassley said, "Hey, we sent them as PDFs."
Right.
I mean, I'm a fast reader. Come on. But I can't read 42,000 papers in 15 hours.
The reality is that's a fair criticism criticism to say, if you want this to be transparent, we already have a lot of questions about the legitimacy of the president who's in the office and how he behaves and the decisions that he makes. Why the Republicans should have gotten all the information that they had available to them, and at least at a minimum, given all of the members of the committee an opportunity to postpone so they could review it. However, you know, at the time, President Obama said elections have consequences, and 60+ million Americans voted for Donald Trump. And at that time, Donald Trump as a candidate said, hey, these are the people, and no other nominee had did this before. These are the people that I'm going to put on the Supreme Court. So the American people knew what type of candidate, what type of jurist would be presented by this president, and they went to the polls and they spoke on this very particular issue.
But Liz, I got to push back on you, and I'm going to go to Spencer on this one.
Of course.
Elections do have consequences. And a black man won twice.
Yes, that's
won
true.
Twice. And there was some 200+ days between Scalia dying and the election. And Spencer, they did not respect that election.
That's right.
And let's also remember, more folks voted for him than voted for Donald Trump.
But they didn't have the They didn't have the Senate. Come on, he didn't have the Senate. Barack Obama didn't have the Senate, and Merrick Garland couldn't get out.
But if you make the argument that
I think it does matter.
If elections have consequences,
all elections,
why not respect the one that Obama won in 2012, Spencer?
That's absolutely right. Unprecedented in terms of history, saying, hey, we're just going to hold this up and not have a confirmation
was not unprecedented. You know, Joe Biden on the Senate floor said, hey, during that time, during that judicial nominee, he said we should wait. And he has been on the record, when he was vice president, he forgot about that clip. When he was a senator, said, let's not do this. Let's not move forward with this judicial nominee.
Joe Biden is the one who put Clarence Thomas on the bench.
Well, you know, that's your party.
No. What I'm saying is that when you see the shoe on the other foot, this isn't about right or wrong. This is pure power. This is the stolen seat. Yeah. Let's be very clear. The Scalia one-off.
No, I thought it was Neil Gorsuch. I thought Gorsuch was the stolen seat.
No, I'm not talking about the guy who went to school with Kavanaugh.
Okay.
Kavanaugh is their dream pick. You know, who cares what Mitch McConnell wanted or didn't want? This white supremacist stole a seat for this pick, not the pick before. And then people say it's the pick before. No. Scalia was a one-off.
But which white supremacist we're talking about?
I'm talking about Mitch McConnell, that unreconstructed Kentuckian.
Okay.
When he stole that pick, it was for the day they could get the tipping point. Kavanaugh, who, there's a reason the United States didn't join the International Criminal Court. Condoleezza Rice got up and talked today. If we had joined the ICC, both them guys may be up for war crimes in terms of some of the things they wrote when we went into Iraq. But Kavanaugh, who was in the Federalist Society, he graduated from law school same year I did, 1990. I remember when they started the Federalist Society. Their long-range plan was to pack the courts. John Kyle is coming back here. The governor just appointed him to fill John McCain's seat. Kyle was the one who walked Kavanaugh around Capitol Hill the last couple of weeks, and the first thing he said at his press conference this afternoon was, I'm going back to get these judicial appointments done. This is their dream pick. This is the guy who's going to launch an attack on everything. And all these people who are saying that elections have consequences and going back and forth, let's see what happens when they can't terminate a pregnancy in these states that are going to outlaw abortion. Let's find out then
what's
whether or
also
not
interesting here that Lindsey Graham comes in and he says, well, look, Hillary Clinton, we knew what kind of a Supreme Court nominee she was going to pick, and then Republicans, we knew who they were going to pick. But it still is important, as far as I'm concerned, that you have a clear understanding of a person's viewpoint. So if a person sits there and says, oh, well, I don't have an opinion on that, that if the paperwork says something different, that means you lied.
That's right.
And so not being able to have that, look, we know a Republican president is going to pick a conservative justice. We know that this pick has gone through the Federalist program. He has gone through their system.
That's right.
He has been vetted. They know exactly how he's going to rule on Roe v. Wade.
That's right.
How he's going to rule on affirmative action.
That's right.
How he's going to rule on immigration.
That's right.
How he's going to rule on big business.
That's
how he's going to rule on the Second Amendment. They know that. But we still should know what that person has to say about critical issues like torture and like some of those issues that took place under President George W. Bush.
Well, not only that, he prepped John Roberts. This is the guy who prepped John Roberts from the White House with that balls and strike BS. This is the guy, when they put Gorsuch on, they went to school together. Gorsuch, his job was to ease Kennedy off the bench. This is the guy they've been waiting for, and there's a paper trail. There's 100,000 more pages we don't have.
And this guy is going to be your next Supreme Court justice.
Liz, why not just disclose? You've got the votes. You've
why
got
not
the
just
Senate.
Disclose more?
Why not just disclose? Why change the rules in the middle of the game? Why not just disclose? And just, it is what it is.
I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization of the game that's being played, albeit they should have released all of the documents in its entirety prior to the beginning of the hearing. They didn't. And unfortunately, 480,000 documents was deemed sufficient. And the American Bar Association gave him a highly qualified ranking in not just his integrity, but in his jurisprudence.
Let's not even talk about his integrity. First of all, they keep saying about this guy's an originalist. He's not. He's a textualist. They read the document, do whatever they want. But let's get to the ones the documents that we have.
Okay.
Let's get to the documents that we have. This is a guy who made a public statement that Nixon versus the United States maybe was decided wrong. This is why Donald Trump nominated him, because he thinks that this guy can help him from not go to jail. But let's just look at what he has said that's on the record. Anybody that says, well, maybe they decided Nixon versus U.S. wrong, who says on the public record that his hero justice is William Rehnquist, who we go back to Watergate, was elevated because he said he would do Nixon's dirty work after the fact. Just the stuff on the record shows you who this guy is.
I want to deal with this here. So earlier you talked about white supremacy.
Yes.
And so I am not a conspiracy theorist. I don't get into that at drama. But circulating all across social media the last 2 hours has been this video of Zena Bush, who was a law clerk for Kavanaugh, who is seated right behind him. And so, of course, on my previous show, we had Shelley go to my iPad, but Henry is directing, so Henry go to my iPad.
Oh, okay.
And so, pull this up, please. I'm going to play from my iPhone. I want y'all to see this. Are y'all seeing it? When y'all seeing it, I got it. I got it. Don't just here we go. I'm just going to play it. So this is a video. Go to the video of her sitting behind Kavanaugh, knowing full well where the camera angle is. That is the white power symbol.
That's exactly what that is.
Now, here's the deal. Somebody said, well, you know, she was fidgeting. That is not fidgeting. This is a 44-second video, not looped, where she held that position the entire time. Now, I've held my arms in all kinds of different ways. I can't imagine holding my arm making... First of all, I'm an alpha.
I'm about to say, that looks like a Kappa symbol. That looks like a Kappa symbol, Spencer.
If you're a Kappa, but she ain't a Kappa.
I'm just saying.
And she also wasn't a Kappa sweetheart.
No.
Okay, but she's making the white power symbol. Now, some people are saying, Spencer, oh, this is really no big deal. I'm just saying, for 45 seconds,
come on,
you sitting back there, and also her husband is a U.S. attorney in Texas.
Come on, man. I mean, they are playing hardball. But you know what? Let's say that was somehow some kind of accident.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. It was a Crip symbol. It was a Kappa symbol. It could be a Kappa sweetheart.
There have been cops fired. There was a cop in Louisiana who was fired because he posted pictures on his Facebook page making the exact same symbol. That's the symbol. What do they call those boys? Because the guy was the co-founder of Vice is one of them.
I know you're talking about
that's their symbol.
Well, so I'm not sure that what she was making is specifically related to.
No, that's their symbol.
How do you do? I don't know. I didn't go to white supremacy school. I don't know what they do.
Okay, Liz,
I don't know.
Liz, cross your arms. Cross your arms.
Right.
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 You see?
You ain't. Hold up. You don't naturally go.
Right.
Wait,
that's called a deliberate move.
With that look on your face.
I can't figure that out. I'm not even going to try to reenact that.
We'll read something into this one, Liz. When the man who lost his son at Parkland touched this man on the shoulder, and he turned around and looked at him with utter contempt for a few seconds before he buttoned his jacket and walked away. What was that about?
Well, so
this fine
again,
great humanitarian.
I never said anything to that regard. You're now making quotes that I never even made. Okay. But here's the deal. To your point, when he turned around, the official statement was that the security intervened. I didn't see security intervening. I saw.
Y'all keep talking.
I didn't see that.
Play the video.
I didn't see that. What I saw is a gentleman reach out his hand, and this nominee did not extend to shake his hand at all. Now, I don't know if it was contempt. I don't know if it was a look of disgust. But I know it was a missed opportunity, and it does speak to his temperament. It does, or at a minimum, his interpersonal relationship skills.
Henry, go to my iPad. Here's the video. Hold up. Let me start it over.
I see it.
This is the video right here. Hi, I'm so-and-so, stuck his hand out, and all of a sudden he walked away.
Yes.
Oh, that was the side.
Liz, go ahead.
I synced it. It was bad.
Okay, it was bad. I'm just checking.
It was bad. It was bad.
I appreciate NBC for allowing us to be able to show that. But go right ahead. Spencer.
So what does this mean in terms of the substance of black folks, right? And if you look at his record on things like educational opportunity and on voting rights, it is not good. You look at affirmative action, you know that Justice Kennedy was kind of a swing vote. The reason we have affirmative action right now is because of the way Justice Kennedy voted, right? Kavanaugh has been against recognizing the past.
Yes.
Hawaii, basically, Native Hawaiians could vote for a special commission on Hawaii. That was struck down, and Kavanaugh basically filed a brief to strike it down. Yeah. Voting rights. He basically said photo ID in South Carolina is fine, it's no problem. That despite the fact there were no instances of voter fraud. That despite the fact that black folks were twice as likely to not have the type of photo ID that was required. That despite the fact that you had legislators who talked about if black folks were given a $100 bill, you know they'd go get an ID like bees are going after watermelon.
Yes. Well, here's the deal. So obviously the hearing is going to continue tomorrow. We'll see if any papers are produced overnight. I doubt it. So we'll have that take place. Folks, first again, this is the inaugural edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered, a daily digital show, of course, that we're streaming on Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube. We got lots of folks who have joined our fan club, and we're going to actually show you some of those names a little bit later. But AFSCME, led by Lee Saunders, President and CEO, they are one of our partners with this. And so here's a message from Lee Saunders.
Thanks, Roland. It's an honor to contribute to Unfiltered and to launch this partnership with you. I look forward to being with you every few weeks, offering my perspective about current issues. Back in April, Roland was one of thousands of people who traveled to Memphis to mark the 50th anniversary of the city's historic sanitation strike. In 1968, 1,300 African-American sanitation workers, members of AFSCME Local 1733, took a stand against degrading working conditions at the hands of a pro-segregation mayor. They marched under the simple but powerful slogan, "I am a man." Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. joined their struggle, coming to Memphis to express his solidarity. It was there that he was assassinated on April 4th. To remember these extraordinary events, AFSCME launched an initiative called I Am 2018. Check us out on Instagram at I Am 2018. This campaign isn't just about what happened in 1968. It's about what's going on in our communities right now. It's about the injustices and opportunity gaps we still face today. I Am 2018 isn't just a commemoration. It's a call to action. A call to action to keep fighting for civil rights, workers' rights, and basic human rights. A call to action to get involved online and in your communities. A call to action to fight for change, block by block, tweet by tweet. I Am 2018 didn't end with our events in Memphis this spring. This is a sustained campaign now, reaching one of its most important phases. Election day is in 9 weeks. The stakes are high, and your participation is essential. In cities nationwide this fall, we will be telling the Memphis story again, connecting it to today's challenges, asking people to answer the call to action by engaging directly in the electoral process. There's no better way to honor the heroes of Memphis than to vote in this year's election. Thanks very much. And I'll see you next time. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at I Am 2018.
Folks, imagine serving your time in federal prison, and then when you get out, there's an election, and you vote, and then you later find out that you were not supposed to vote. You might think that was an innocent thing until you're prosecuted. That's the case of Crystal Mason, a woman out of Fort Worth, Texas, who is returning to prison as a result of voting in an election. She says it was a simple mistake. No one told me I couldn't vote, and all of a sudden you're sending me back to jail. Crystal joins us right now, along with her attorney, Kim Cole, out of Fort Worth. Glad to have both of you here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Kim, I want to go to you first, being the lawyer, because so where do we stand now? Is it over? Has she been sentenced, and must she now report to prison?
Well, it's not over, but she has been sentenced, and she is due to report to prison in 9 days. The state case is on appeal, and so she's out on an appellate bond fighting that particular conviction. And the federal case, just last week on August 30th, the judge revoked her supervised release in her federal case, and so now she's due to report to prison in 9 days. However, we are vigorously working to get that decision overturned.
Crystal, this has to be stunning for you. Here you are putting your life back together, and then all you did was vote in an election. It's not like you were trying to actually do it. And to have to face nearly a year in prison, I think back to the cost to taxpayers when it comes to housing a federal inmate. I mean, it just makes no sense.
Roland, I want to make something clear. Crystal's not only looking at almost a year, she also has been sentenced to 5 years in prison on the state case. That's the voting conviction. So she's looking at almost 6 years.
So the 10 months is for a probation violation, and Texas is saying since she had voted legally, she's going. So that's 6 years in prison
for voting.
Crystal, go right ahead.
Right now, everything is pretty much overwhelming for me, and I am not ready to go back to prison at all.
And so, and Crystal, take me through. So, what election was it that you voted in? And you said, look, no one told you. So when you got out of prison, there were no paperwork. There was nothing there that they said, look, these are your rights, what you can and cannot do.
Yeah, there was paperwork. It was my conditions, but that was not in my paperwork at all.
So in your paperwork, when you got out, there was nothing that said anything about voting.
No.
So when you had to go back to court, what, the court just said whatever? I'm sure you presented the paperwork and said, here it is. There's nothing about voting in here. So how was I supposed to know I couldn't vote?
My supervised release officer testified on the stand and explained that it was nothing in paperwork. No one told me, and I was doing my conditions as.
Wait a minute. So the person who was supervising you testified that there was nothing in the paperwork that said you were not supposed to be able, that you could not vote, and the court still said, what the hell? We don't care. You're going to jail?
Correct. Yeah.
How is your Crystal? How is your go right? I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
That's why our case is being appealed. We don't believe for one moment that the state proved their case. So the supervised release officer himself testified that he never told Crystal that she couldn't vote. In fact, he said there is no procedure in place to do so in the federal system.
This is, it is baffling to me, again, that you are facing 6 years in jail, federal and state prison, for voting. Look, I understand the whole issue in terms of it's important to protect the ballot. Do you believe, Crystal, that this is a case where you have Republicans who control Tarrant County, who control politics in Texas, want to make an example out of you to prove their argument that there's massive voter fraud?
Correct. Absolutely, Roland. Tarrant County is the largest red urban district in the country. They are very proud of this, and they want to keep it that way. This is a gross miscarriage of justice, and it is an intentional case of voter suppression. In this case, Crystal's neighbor personally called the Republican district attorney to have Crystal prosecuted. Nothing followed protocol, even from the district attorney deciding to prosecute Crystal, but also Crystal's sentence. Tarrant County is the same county where this boy killed 4 people and didn't get sentenced to prison.
Wow. Wow. Crystal, go right ahead with your final word. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and also earlier this year, there was a judge in Tarrant County who forged over 100 signatures to get himself elected. He wasn't sentenced to prison either.
Crystal, your final comment, please.
I'm just saying keep my family in your prayers.
All right, then. We certainly appreciate it. Crystal Mason, thank you for joining us, as well as Kim. Real quick here, I want to go to our panel. Spencer, go right ahead.
The objective here is to chill black voters. They recognize a significant number of people who have formerly been in, and they basically want to say, don't even think about voting here. There are people who will say, I don't want to go back, and it's not even worth it for me to cast my ballot. I see what happened to that woman. I'm just going to stay home. And so this is political. I'm very sorry for this woman. She is basically paying for all of us in terms of an attempt to suppress the vote.
This also, Greg, shows the importance of that ballot initiative in Florida, where in November, it was 60% of the people cast their ballots to change the state constitution to restore the voting rights of formerly incarcerated. That's what this speaks to.
Absolutely. You brought that up the other day on Tom Joyner when you were talking to Andrew Gillum. This is why. This is their last game. They're losing demographics. They're going to lose these elections. This is almost like the 2 years between 1865 and 67 when Andrew Johnson was in charge of Reconstruction. This is purebred intimidation. And in Florida, if felons can get their voting rights restored, that state is never going to go red again. And Texas is close now. You got a 3-4 point gap in the Ted Cruz race. They are pulling out all the stops now, man. And like you, I'm just dumbfounded to hear this story. There's no legal reason for her not to be in jail.
Liz, I don't understand how you can even, any prosecutor or any judge would say, let's spend 5 years of taxpayer dollars where it's going to cost you in excess of $250,000 to incarcerate a woman because she cast a ballot.
For an administrative error, it sounds like it. And this is, there's no way that you can defend this. I think that Crystal's attorney spoke very eloquently that this is certainly a miscarriage of justice, and that I personally worked on voter restoration initiatives in Maryland, and I think telling the story, she gives a name and a face and, you know, a pulse to why it's so very important for your viewers to really support and to pay attention to access to, you know, to voter rights and access to organizations that go out there and support of organizations that go out there and fight this fight. But I think what's even more important, what can we do for her? What can the nation, what can people watch, and what can we do for her?
Well, I think the pressure has to be applied to that judge, to that DA, to Governor Abbott, to say you can intervene in this and say this makes no sense whatsoever. Right. And so Republicans want to talk about family values.
Right.
Does it make sense for this to take this woman away from her family? She's already served her time, and she says, "Look, I committed a basic error." That, to me, makes no sense whatsoever. So that's actually, I think, what should happen. Folks, the polls are closing in less than 30 minutes in Massachusetts, where Boston City Councilor Ayanna Pressley is challenging 10-term Congressman Michael Capuano in the Democratic primary for the congressional seat once held by John F. Kennedy. Pressley is a progressive, but so is Capuano. This race is more about ousting the old guard, the white male old guard. She's an African-American woman, and so we'll be watching this race. It could be the next big upset, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in New York, or even in the Democratic primary, Andrew Gillum in Florida. And so we are going to, again, be watching that out. We'll have the details for you tomorrow to see what happens in that particular race. When we come back from the next short break, we're going to talk to Reverend Dr. William J. Barber. We'll talk about the Poor People's Campaign and also what needs to be done to get rid of voter apathy, to get folks to understand they must not only register to vote, but also go to the polls in November. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Essence Atkins, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hey, yo, Peace World, what's going on? It's the Love King of R&B, Raheem Devon, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, my name is Brescia Webb, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. Ow. Well, I like a nice filter usually, but we can be unfiltered.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan. If you're ready, you are listening to and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
What's up? I'm Lance Gross, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Hi, this is Cheryl Lee Ralph, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, could it be any other way? Really? It's Roland Martin.
Of course, he is a strong man of the word. He is, of course, the former state conference chair of the North Carolina NAACP, a board member of the NAACP, and has been traveling all across the country with repairs of the breach, working with many other organizations for the Poor People's Campaign. Of course, they launched that, picking up the mantle of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was the last movement Dr. King was involved in before he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Joining us via Skype right now is Reverend Dr. William Barber. Doc, you just heard me talk about that sister from from Texas. Here she is facing 6 years in prison because she didn't realize she wasn't allowed to vote. You and I have dealt with this whole issue of voter suppression and voter intimidation. That appears to be the Republicans' plan all across this country, not just in Texas, but you see it in your state of North Carolina, which I call the 21st century Alabama.
Indeed. And first of all, let me just celebrate Roland Unfiltered and celebrate the work that you're doing in your panel. You know, you're exactly right. Voter suppression that we've seen and we fought in North Carolina and actually won against in North Carolina in many instances is the card that's being played. The most underreported story is not what Russia may have done, but what voter suppression in fact has done. Millions of votes were suppressed. In Wisconsin, for instance, where Trump won by maybe 30,000 votes, there were 250,000, almost 300,000 votes that were suppressed. The whole issue around photo ID is just another form of voter suppression. And as your guest, one of your, Brother Carr said, this is about power. This is about demographic shifts. This is about a coming day when no one group will have the majority. And we have to understand, different than 1819, the second Reconstruction, first Reconstruction, this Reconstruction, we have Reconstruction and Deconstruction happening both simultaneously. And voter suppression is at the heart of it.
And what we are seeing, when you talk about those 200,000+ in Wisconsin, that's not just black folks. They're targeting elderly white people. They're targeting young voters. There was a clerk in a clerk in Wisconsin who said that she purposely moved an early voting location off of a college campus because in the last election, too many of them were voting Democrat, and she moved it to a smaller location way out with a smaller parking lot, which basically was a way of telling people, oh my goodness, I came up, lines were long, I'm just going to go ahead and go home. Those are the tactics we're seeing happen across the country. All right, so we lost Reverend Barber's Skype there. We'll pull him up in 1 second. I want to go to our panel. Spencer, look, you're the author of a book on this whole issue of voter suppression. That's what we're seeing. This is a deliberate tactic, plan of action by the Republican Party.
That's right. They look at it like gerrymandering. Hey, this is what we're going to do to kind of maintain control. It is tragic. And again, this notion of Texas we're going to scare black folks away from the poll because you don't need to go because you might end up back in prison. I mean, that's really what is happening here.
Black codes, man. I mean, Reverend Barber, really, with this third Reconstruction thesis he has and this fusion movement, that is so important. And you can see how it's terrible there. Right. Georgia. Here we have Stacey Abrams. I was driving down 16th Street. I saw a Stacey Abrams sign and an Andrew Gillum sign last night. Warmed my heart because there's momentum now. So what do they do in Georgia? They threatened to close all the polling places except a few in this area. And what happened?
In a county that is 61% African American.
Unbelievable. But to your point, Roland, and this is what Reverend Barber's been talking about.
And the individual who was the consultant who suggested it was a donor to the Republican nominee for governor.
That's right. That's
so exactly not an impartial individual.
Not at all. But what happened? People not only expressed their outrage with their mouths, they got organized. And that's the power of what Barber is doing. Right. The threat now is that it's going to overwhelm. As you pointed out with Gillum the other day, man, they had him in 4th place, brother. They polling the wrong people. Right. They're not polling these people who are organized.
Liz, the issue that we keep seeing, and I'm going to come back to you after I go back to Reverend Barber. I think we got him back. We keep seeing this. Reverend Barber, we have you back?
Yeah, I am.
Here we go. When I talk about what is deliberate, in your state of North Carolina, the Republicans were busted by having a targeted laser. The federal court said a laser-like focus targeting African Americans. They literally asked, when are black people voting? And 70+% of African Americans who voted early voted in the first week, which is why they eliminated early voting across many of these counties to have just one location. And at one point, there was even a chair who suggested one early voting location for Mecklenburg County, which is where Charlotte is, 900,000 people to only have one early voting location. That is deliberate.
Well, and interesting, this court, not another court, this court that we have, the current Supreme Court, said surgical racism. Now, when people who tend to be racist in their decision have to call out the racist, that's pretty racist. And they said
true. No question. No question.
They said it was surgical racism. And what we have to, it wasn't just photo ID. They went after early voting. They went after same-day registration. We were able to prove that 50% of women didn't have, not just black women, didn't have the kind of photo ID they wanted. That it was impacting older people. One lady was over 95 years old, and it would have stopped her from voting, and she's been voting for 60, 70 years. But all of this is because, Roland, at the end of the day, the greatest opportunity is in the South. Southern states are really not red states or blue states. They are non-voting states. If you build black people and progressive whites and brown people in the southern states, you can turn about 5 southern states right now: North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, and even Texas. If that happens, the whole political concepts have been torn apart. The solid South is down. The wall has been broken. And that's the great fear. The great fear is that we wake up in the South and we do fusion organizing. These extremists are no longer winning in the South by 12 points and 13 points. Many of them are only winning by 1 point. Some of them are winning by less than 20,000 votes in statewide races, where you have hundreds of thousands of black people, either unregistered who are registered but who are choosing not to vote. We can shift, and they know it's coming.
And Reverend Barber, we talk about that shift. One of the things that you and I have talked about is this voter apathy that we are seeing. People who are saying, look, I need to be excited. I need for somebody to energize me. And what we're seeing black folks like Latasha Brown, like Adrian Shropshire, like DeWanna Watson, and others who are saying, you know what, we're not waiting on some Democratic Party. We're not waiting on a candidate. We're going to, frankly, raise our money. We're going to take our few dollars, and we're going to put it together, and we're going to mobilize and organize our people. We talk about Florida. Everybody keeps talking about get folks out to vote, but before you can vote in November, you got to be registered by October 9th. That's right. And so talk about that in terms of what you are doing with the Poor People's Campaign to get people to understand that they must be mobilized and organized to register, then to get folks to the polls in November.
Yeah, we don't wait to fight. We fight while we're fighting. We fight on both ends. And let me just give a quick point, Roland. A lot of people don't know the only state that stopped Trump down ballot in the South was North Carolina. That's because we fought, and we took back the governorship. We took back the Attorney General's office. We fought in the courts, in the street, and at the ballot box. What we are saying in the Poor People's Campaign, we now have 41 coordinating committees in 41 states. We are registering people for the movement who vote. And what I mean by registering folk for the movement, it means educating them that it's not just about a candidate. Health care is on the ballot. Your life is on the ballot. Voting rights are on the ballot. The environment is on the ballot. Criminal justice laws are on the ballot. We are telling folks there were 97 million people registered in the last election who did not vote. Black voting went down from 66% down to 59%. 765,000 of us who were registered to vote didn't vote, and Trump is in office because of less than 80,000 votes. We cannot sit back and have apathy. So what we're doing is canvassing. I've talked with you and Reverend Derek Johnson, NAACP, and others, and Mark Thompson, about us calling almost a national moral revival vote to bury voter apathy program, televise it everywhere, and say to folks, listen, we have the tools to turn this around, but the only fights we lose are the ones we don't fight, and it's time for us to get in the game. Nobody can sit home. I'm traveling everywhere I can, and we've been in Eastern Kentucky, Roland, with white people in Eastern Kentucky, and Deep South Alabama. And I'm telling you, people are coming together around this fusion coalition. I told a group of white people, I said, at the end of the day, if you don't have a living wage and you don't have health care and you don't have money and you can't pay your light bill, we're all black in the dark. So we better get together and understand that if someone is a racist, they're also going to be anti-labor, anti-women, anti-gay, anti-Latino. They're going to be anti-healthcare 9 times out of 10. The same states that are voter suppression states, Roland, if you put them up on the map, those same states denied healthcare. Those same states denied living wages. And eerily, in terms of raw number, the majority of the people that get hurt by the people who get elected because of racial voter suppression are white. And in terms of raw numbers, not in terms of percentage of race. So we have to build a fusion coalition in this season to beat back all of this extremism. And that's what we're trying to do across the country.
I wanted to give Liz an opportunity to weigh in on that. Liz, I keep saying, Republicans, they can talk a good game about trying to get black votes, but as long as they are denying black people the opportunity to vote, and with these tactics, which are borderline legal, the refusal to deal with Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act, they are not going to get black votes. As Common said in Glory, freedom is like a religion to us.
Right, right. I think it's telling. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are in the GOP strategy rooms, but I am. And when they talk about winning elections, they really talk about Republicans against Democrats. And I've heard this, even in Maryland, which is a blue state. You know, we have a gubernatorial election right now. Governor Hogan.
Blue state, Republican governor.
Yeah, Republican governor. And so I've been in the room, and I have colleagues who are black Republicans as well, and especially in counties like Prince George's County, the most affluential black county in the country, and really gunning up support around a particular candidate. And party leaders have frowned upon our efforts to support a black candidate because that means that more black people, more Democrats will come out. So
which means more black people.
Which means more black people. And so when I'm in the room, I have to stand up and say, wait a minute, this is important for us to make sure that we support a person. But I never feel comfortable bringing up the issue of race because Republicans are not racist. There's no racism in the party, but it's that kind of, behind the scenes, hidden messaging about winning, the W's and the L's versus, the Republicans beating out the Democrats. But at the end of the day, when you're strategizing and you're looking at polling places and you're looking at the demographics of the district and down to the polling location, it's really about suppressing black vote. It's really about, they say it's about winning. They say it's about getting a conservative person in office. It's best for everyone. They don't talk about keeping black people out of the polls, but it does happen. It's happening in Maryland. I've seen it happen in Maryland. I've witnessed it personally happen. So, I think it's really important for everyone that's watching this that, I know you guys kind of talk loosely, fast and loose about the Republican Party as if every Republican is against or is trying to suppress black votes.
But a hell of a whole lot.
It is, and so it's hard for me to counter that.
Just a racist.
Because it happens.
Not hard. It's impossible. Bottom line, you can say that there's no racism in the party, but there are racists in the party.
Right.
And suppression of votes of black people, I'm sorry, that's racist. Reverend Barber, final comment on this topic. Go ahead.
One of the things that's going to have to happen is even black Republicans. We've had black Republicans before. My granddaddy was one. Benjamin Hooks was one. We're not dealing with Lincoln Republicans today or even Teddy Roosevelt's Republicans. We're dealing with straight power-hungry extremists who will cut deals with anybody because they have a plan. Nancy McLean wrote a book called Democracy in Chains. Everybody ought to read that book, how she connects what's going on now to a Nobel Peace economist out of Tennessee and the Koch brothers, and what their overall strategy, even down to changing the Constitution. But here's the deal. The racism is that we don't talk about. Somebody calls the N-word, okay. If somebody, holds a sign, okay. But the racism is not one Republican has called for the restoration of the Voting Rights Act. That's racism. Racism is when you couch the Affordable Care Act as being Obamacare, and when the majority of the people going to get help are actually white, but if you take it, but you have to frame it almost as it's something going to black and brown people to get people to be against it. Racism are the policies, resegregation, cutting public money for public education. Racism is knowing that there are 54% of African Americans who work for less than a living wage, and you don't support a living wage, and you know how it's devastating the community. This is the kind of racism we have to talk about, and it doesn't always come across nasty. In fact, it can be Gentile and follow parliamentary rules and the order. We saw racism today in the Kavanaugh. We saw the way in which they basically were saying, look, let's just move this through. You cannot tell me that if that was a black person being nominated for the Supreme Court, they would not have raised holy hell about everything that today they're saying it's fine. Let's just go along with it, and it's okay. That's the real racism we got to deal with.
All right, then, folks. On Friday, thousands were in attendance in Detroit at the homegoing for Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. She passed away, of course, at the age of 76 on August 16th. I was there as well as a part of that celebration. Here is some of the amazing eulogies that took place in Detroit at Grace Temple on Friday.
All of her life, she supported the causes. She was a feminist before feminism was popular. She was a civil rights activist when it wasn't popular. She gave us pride, and she gave us a regal bar to reach. And that's why we're all here. We don't all agree on everything, but we agree on Aretha. She was the soundtrack of the civil rights movement. You know, the other Sunday on my show, I misspelled respect. And a lot of y'all corrected me. Now I want y'all to help me correct President Trump to teach him what it means.
I was here for the Rosa Parks funeral and watched long lines at the museum for Rosa Parks, long lines for Aretha, long lines today. If we have long lines to celebrate death and short lines for voting, we lost Michigan by 11,000 votes. 100,000 Detroit unregistered. Long lines at the death of the icons and short lines for voting, something is missing.
In the midst of our nation's current moral crisis, we need again that gospel that Aretha sang. So don't put it up, keep playing it. Her singing was both spiritual revelation and skilled interpretation, because she was singing from that sacred place carved from the moans and the music of the ancestors, because she was singing the experience of a people who had to cry in order not to die, because she was singing in the spirit, the Holy Ghost of those who sang in order to be saved. Aretha's singing challenged the dangling discords of hate and lies and racism and injustice. Her singing was liberation and was revolution in the major key. It carved out sacred space wherever she went, from the church to the club to the White House. Aretha showed us how the sorrow songs might yet save America, save this democracy, and keep us from bowing down to the structures of this world. When Aretha sang, the Holy Ghost came. No matter where you were, when she sang, it made you want to get up, not only to dance, but to do something about racism and something about poverty. When she sang, whether it was at a big concert for a civil rights rally or for an inauguration, her singing made you want to fight on a little while longer. Aretha's singing made you want to choose togetherness over division and love over hate.
In that belly of blackness in Detroit, without apology or excuse, that embrace of her blackness led her to be political. We got all kind of music now that ain't got nothing to do with nothing except cars and money and glory. I ain't mad at that, but she was about getting Angela Davis out of jail. She was about working with Martin Luther King Jr. and Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. She was about transforming the existence of black America.
All right, then. And, of course, Reverend Barber, you saw the video there. Of course, he gave one of the eulogies. And when the Williams brothers and Vanessa Bell Armstrong took the stage, y'all got Reverend Barber there? Pull up Reverend Barber. So, y'all, I'm going to play this video for y'all. Now, normally, Reverend Barber, he got his cane. Normally, he's sitting in his high chair because of the injuries he sustained. And, you know, he moves a little slow. But when the Williams brothers and Vanessa hit it, play the video to see what Reverend Barber did.
The Holy Ghost.
Whoa, whoa. Oh, yeah, Doc. Doc, you were moving. You were moving the shoulders. You were moving the feet. Wow. You were getting it.
Where's the cane? The Holy Ghost is a healer, Doc.
The Holy Ghost is a healer.
But after a whole day of being in, when they got in those harbors in the woods, after the slave master beat them all day, they still could shout when the right spirit came.
I understand. Now, speaking of shouting, the Aretha Franklin family, they are not too particularly happy with Reverend Jasper Williams, Jr., of course, who gave the eulogy. He was blasted by many people for what he had to say, and then he held a news conference on Sunday where he defended what he had to say. Well, last night, Vaughn Franklin released a statement to the Associated Press. I talked to Vaughn yesterday as well, and where the family blasted, calling his eulogy offensive. And Reverend Barber, a lot of people were surprised that the Franklin family would come out with that statement, and they said simply there was nobody in the family who was happy with what he had to say to eulogize Aretha Franklin.
Well, you know, that's a very sensitive time, and the family has a right to speak and should speak. I've been trying to preach this gospel now for 30 years. Eulogy literally means means good, and logia means words, so it's supposed to be good words about the person who is deceased. You know, it's not a time to say things that, first of all, many of them need to be challenged. The facts, the stat, this generalization that, you know, we've lost our souls. And so I've been really hurt. I've cried when I saw some of it and been very prayerful both for the family and for the eulogists. We know who Aretha was. You know, there's things I wish we could have had, you know, a woman preacher to also, you know, preach and lift at that time. But to talk about people's husbands and I mean, fathers and what they didn't do, it's just not the place, you know, in a eulogy. And on an international stage, the thing to do is to lift up what Aretha lived, you know, and what she called us to, and the obstacles she overcame, and how she sung out of that belly of the sorrow songs that are part of our history, and somehow took a painful experience and gave it power, took a sad experience and gave it joy. You know, I talked about how whenever Aretha sang, you wanted to move, not just move, dance, but you wanted to move to the voting polls. You wanted to move and stand up for something. You know, even respect. It sounds like she's talking about a man, but respect becomes an anthem for the movement, too. We demand respect. We say respect is non-negotiable. So I pray that the singers and the other people that spoke have helped to bring healing to the family and have helped to speak to the nation more clearly about who Aretha was. I did see something where the pastor said something, did a press conference apology, but I also don't want to get distracted too long there because Aretha is yet singing and we got work to do. We have work to do.
Reverend Barber, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
God bless.
All right, then. Again, going to our panel here. Look, it was very interesting is as I sat there, as I listened to Jasper Williams, I literally was going, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, when he started talking about, you know, black people walk around like we're zombies and we drugged out and we drunk and look, I absolutely understand about respect to black people. Respect. One of the reasons why I don't like anybody calling me the N-word. My deal is I'm not a nigga. I'm a black man. That's right. You can call me a brother. You can call me whatever. You're not gonna use words against me that white oppressors have used against us. But when I listened to that sermon, I was sitting there trying to figure out, he was talking about, you know, black women can't raise a black boy, but laying in front of you was a woman who raised 4 black boys, who was sitting in the audience. And I was like...
But he said at his press conference the other day that he didn't mean disrespect to her. He also said it was the end of a 9-hour funeral, and he didn't feel like preaching. But the thing that broke my heart, Roland, was Jesse Jackson, in many ways, gave that eulogy. When he talked about WLAC in Nashville, I'm from Nashville. I remember as a little boy listening to Jasper Williams give the sermon, I Fell in Love with a Prostitute. This is an old school black conservative Bible preacher who preached C.L. Franklin's funeral. Watching the funeral of C.L. Franklin, you see Jasper Williams preach an hour sermon and Jesse is hopping up and down on the pulpit. That black funeral of Aretha Franklin was representative of our death rituals, including the moments at the death ritual when the preacher goes off the rails and everybody's like, what the hell is he talking? Jasper Williams gave the world something that they'd never seen before. They'd never seen him, but he introduced himself to the world in a way that even undercut his own genealogy.
Well, the beauty of black church, right, is it's not based on kind of white standards, right? It's completely free. But that also means that we've got to call folk out, right? When they're out of bounds. Right?
Well, I'm not against that. What I'm saying is that calling Jasper Williams out requires us to be honest about the genealogy of the black church, because there's also silences. There were people who agreed with Jasper Williams. I'm saying that the complicated thing for me about Jasper, and I'm not defending Jasper Williams. I'm saying there's a whole line in terms of the black church. That's why he was there. It wasn't that they just pick him out of clean air. And I know the Franklin family is now backing up.
Well, no, and what he did was, of course, he did C.L. Franklin's funeral. He did several other Franklin family members who died as well. Liz, but what really got me was when he had the news conference. When he was asked, okay, you laid all these things out, what's your plan? Well, I'm not really going to share that right now. That's a conversation black folks should have among themselves. And I'm going, wait a minute.
Nah.
You just spoke to an international audience. Now you got a news conference. And you got more cameras there than you would have normally in a pulpit. And now you don't want to talk about your plan? Hello, that's the time to talk about your plan.
He certainly could have corrected the record or just taken that as an opportunity to change the conversation and kind of honor Aretha Franklin's life and her legacy and to kind of, you know, take a step back and be reflective. And she was an honorary member of my esteemed sorority. I'm a Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated member.
Yeah, we got you. And they had Deltas had their mega service on Tuesday, of course, at the Wright Museum. So but you got your Delta shout out.
You got my Delta shout out. All my
my wife a Delta too. I got you.
Shout out to the light skin soror. So I think it's important. I think it's important.
This is wrong.
We unfiltered, right? No, but no. Look, I'm Catholic. And I was watching the ceremony because, you know, like not all of my family members are Catholic, and I've been to the black church, and I get it. It's a gathering.
There's some black Catholic churches. I grew up in one of them.
There's some black Catholic churches, but they never reach the level of an AME, right? They never reach the level. They never
obviously, you ain't been to the
right one.
That's right. I'm just letting you know, Liz.
That's right.
All right, I'll take your word for it.
Hey, look, listen to St. Augustine.
I'm just letting you know. The meeting in the Catholic church I grew up in was founded in my grandparents' living room.
Okay.
I've been to a black Catholic church.
Roman Catholic. Roman Catholic. There's more than, I mean, maybe they were Episcopalian saying they were Catholic. I don't know.
You went.
I went to the Basilica of the National Shrine, the first basilica in the country. My point is this, watching it, it's still comforting. It's something very, very familiar to everyone watching that. And it was disappointing to kind of not only just hear what he was saying, but his behavior with Ariana Grande. And the other bishop.
Jasper wasn't on stage when that happened. You talking about Bishop Ellis.
Yes, but just the behavior, and then black Twitter or all Twitter just kind of erupting about the behavior of black men in the position of power when they have positions of authority in our churches, and just kind of it just kind of creeped out until, you know, kind of casting a really wide blanket and generations on everyone.
All those things happened, and then you had Stevie Wonder who came on and basically rebuked what Jasper Williams had to say. Gladys Knight brought it home as well. And so at the end of it was 8 hours and 50 minutes. Okay, it started, the prelude was at 9:30 a.m.
Man.
And it didn't. Jennifer Holiday didn't sing her last note until 6:50. And here's the deal, okay? All these black people are like, oh my God, it's so long. Don't act like y'all ain't never been to no long funeral.
Come on.
For somebody didn't nobody know.
But what about Chuck Woolery? His tweet saying that it was distasteful, and that was offensive. Like who is he?
And that's the beauty.
But why is he critiquing? Why does he get a chance to critique it?
Because he's irrelevant. So I mean, but the whole it
got picked up on the media.
But of course, which we don't control, which is hence why we have our own show here.
No question.
Okay.
I mean, let's think about this as well. Here's something that very few people commented on. Louis Farrakhan is sitting on that stage. He didn't speak, but he was there. Barack Obama was not.
Oh, they were mad as hell. Farrakhan was there.
I'm sure they were. But here's the thing: because that was a black space, Bill and Hillary Clinton had to sit there and bear it. Meaning what? This is a space just like Roland Martin Unfiltered. We control this space.
Right, that's what it was.
For good, bad,
and Aretha Franklin knew Farrakhan.
That's exactly
was
right.
Friends with Farrakhan, stood with Farrakhan.
That's right.
He was there.
And Detroit was up for #1 in the Nation of Islam.
And all the folks who are mad, if you want to be mad that Farrakhan was there, then you want to get mad at Aretha. But see, that's what people crack me up. They don't want to get mad at Aretha Franklin.
Right. No.
But they want to say, well, why was he there? Because he was a friend of hers.
No question.
I'm like, whatever. All right, folks, we're going to take a break right now. First of all, let me explain to you. Roland Martin Unfiltered is supposed to be a 1-hour show, but we're live streaming it, so we went overtime our inaugural show. What the hell? It happens. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Colin Kaepernick. I know y'all got something to say.
I got to go.
What's wrong, Liz?
I got to go. I got to.
You ain't got nothing to say about Colin Kaepernick? What? You wear Adidas? Is that what it is?
Republicans buy sneakers too, ain't they? With Michael
take a break.
Jordan?
We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll talk Colin Kaepernick and Nike.
I have a dream. This dream must, alas, be disentangled from whatever nightmare controls this fearfully white republic. Author, James Baldwin.
All right, as you know, Colin Kaepernick has not been in the NFL now, going on his second season. He's being whiteballed by the NFL because he dared to protest police brutality. Folks have been saying he's protesting the national anthem and the flag, which is not the case. It's a flat-out lie. But now what has happened is people didn't realize that he was still under contract with Nike, a deal he signed in 2011. Now Nike, they put this image out yesterday. This is Colin Kaepernick. He is going to be the face of Nike's 30th anniversary of their Just Do It campaign. Well, conservatives are losing their damn mind. Country singer John Rich showed a photo of one of his sound guys cutting the Nike logo off of his Nike socks. They might want to hold up the socks. You may want to keep that on. You got folks out there burning their tennis shoes, okay? People are talking about how Nike stock was down 3% today. Also, I checked, Adidas stock was down today. Puma stock was down today. So you can't just say it was all about Colin Kaepernick. And so it's all of this drama. You still got white folks in America mad at Colin Kaepernick because he dared to wear an afro and dared to have a protest. And if I recall, he was sitting down, and there was a member of the military who said, you were disrespecting. He said, if you're going to protest, take a knee. Now they got a problem with taking a knee. Now, here's what's interesting. Go back to our panel, okay? So, Spence, I want to start with you.
Yeah.
Nike has the contract, which they just re-upped in March, to do the uniforms for the NFL through 2028. So here is one of the NFL's major sponsors putting Kaepernick front and center of the 30th anniversary of the Just Do It campaign. I know Roger Goodell is like, man, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I don't really hold up companies, but it is kind of a powerful statement to be out there. I mean, it wasn't like we're with him. They're like, hey, you got to stand for something. But I think that's an important statement in terms of being out there with Cap.
Well, you know who I'd like to hear on this is the great Bill Roden. Because Nike has made a lot of money by commodifying resistance. In other words, Serena, Colin Kaepernick, they're not going to take a political stance, and they're too big for the NFL to ignore. So
well, keep in mind, Air Jordans were banned by the NBA.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. But Nike, Phil Knight, who, by the way, I understand dropped $500,000 in a Republican race out there in Oregon for a Republican gubernatorial candidate, Phil Knight knows how to count. Their marketing people understand that resistance sells, that rebels sell. That's why they can brand everything, right? Apple does the same thing. Right. They're not taking a chance. But if anybody, Dave Zirin wrote something in The Nation about this, if anybody can figure out how to use Nike to advance the cause, it might be Colin Kaepernick.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess as the conservative on the panel, I don't see how this impacts me. I think that Republicans who are tweeting or showing images of them burning their sneakers or their Nike paraphernalia is just ridiculous. I don't think that this was a political message from Nike. I think this is just pure business, economics, and I think they realize that he is the perfect spokesperson to just do it. And I think, well, you know, I'm a Baltimore girl.
Pull the graphic up, please, because the quote on there, I want to read from that. So if y'all can pull the graphic up, I appreciate that, so you can see it again, where Colin Kaepernick is alluding to basically sacrificing everything.
His career.
Then all the people like, oh, well, you didn't sacrifice. So believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And then, of course, you had some people like, well, you still had a contract. And then I love the people who were saying, well, will he give the money away? Have y'all paid any attention? He's given away more than $1 million to various charities. Right. I mean, so it's. I love how the goalpost keeps getting moved.
I'm confused. I mean, I know there was a whole lot of concern, especially from people like me as conservatives, saying, okay, well, what is he kneeling for? And then we figured out what he was kneeling for. So we're like, what do we need to do as a nation or as a party or whomever needs to do something? What do we need to do for him to stand? Or at the end of the day, he took a position and he suffered for it. There's no doubting that. I mean, I can argue about your opinions all day, but the facts are the facts. He suffered financially.
And he is being deliberately whiteballed by the.
I don't know about that. I don't know about
Hold on, here's why it's deliberate.
They
are signing scrubs.
Oh, my God. I don't know about that. I don't have the facts.
I do.
Where the receipts? I need the receipts.
Liz, I got receipts that could stretch around this room.
You ain't got no receipts.
And lap this room 1,000 times. They are signing scrubs. I'm talking about the Houston Texans, my Texans last year, signed a brother who had not thrown a pass in 6 years.
I hear you on that. But are they signing them because these people are they consider better or
no?
Let me finish my question.
He hasn't thrown a pass in 6 years.
Just because you yell it don't make it the truth.
This man led his team to 2 consecutive NFC Championship games and the Super Bowl.
I'm not arguing the stats. What I'm saying is he not being signed because he's a distraction, or is he not being signed because he took a political position?
He's not being signed because the NFL saying you gonna say Toby.
That's where I need the receipt.
That's why he's not being signed.
That's why I need the receipt on that.
And that's why the arbitrator, Spencer, said his collusion case can move forward. But the NFL wanted it dismissed.
That was a procedural step. That wasn't
hold up. No.
That was a procedural step.
The arbitrator could have dismissed his case. The arbitrator decided that there was enough evidence that they had collected of collusion to advance it to a trial.
Procedurally, that's not the merits of the case, period. You know that, Spencer. They haven't determined the merits, whether there was collusion or not.
Well, if there was no evidence, they just
there was no evidence.
It was enough for a trier of facts to make a determination. He did not make the determination. Thank you.
Okay, but Spencer, correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
If there's enough evidence, it moves forward.
Yes, right.
If there was no evidence, arbitrator would have said, this thing is over.
Right.
But the thing is,
that doesn't mean that there is going to be evidence to prove that there was collusion.
What we're saying is there's enough right now to move forward.
That's a procedural step. We're saying the same thing, but you're drawing a different conclusion.
You're damn right I am. White ball.
The thing that I hope, I mean, even as and again, it's great to be here again with this argument and these discussions on Roland Martin Unfiltered, brother, is when you build something black, when you build something self-determining, we control it. Remember when Stephon Marbury put those cheap sneakers out?
$15.
Exactly. And it kind of flopped the Starberries. Look, Nike.
And they got mad.
But Nike, you got black folks now going to run out and buy Nikes. Nikes with their sweatshop issues,
I was going to say that.
With their gender discrimination. Nike has figured out a way to make money off of something that's a pure political issue, and we're going to run by sneakers.
That's why I wear Under Armour. I'm a Baltimore girl.
Here's the key here. Of course, his stock went down when he joined Trump's CEO council.
He did. That's true.
The reality is this here. I have no problem with what Nike is doing. If a company is making money, first of all, they also announced that proceeds for this line they're going to be developing with Kaepernick are going to go to his initiative as well.
Okay.
And you have that going on.
Yes.
And I can't wait when they come up with the I'm with Cap. And I've been texting Colin Kaepernick. We've talked about this. He's coming out with his own jersey. So versus buying his San Francisco 49er jersey, which means you're benefiting the NFL.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, Liz. Last year, he wasn't even in the league, and he was still in the top 50 of jerseys being bought.
No question.
And so bottom line is the NFL got a problem in their hands now because they wanted this story to go away before the new season. No, it's about to ramp up.
Yep.
And, folks, and their rates about to go down because people like me will not, and I've been clear, I will not watch the NFL games because of this. And so, but let me do this here, okay? So Jason Whitlock sent a tweet out saying that, hey, this thing was all about money in terms of what Colin Kaepernick was doing. And see, I had to send him a few tweets last night because, see, what really bothers me, and look, I know Jason, I met Jason, and Jason's a nice guy, but he's sort of playing this fake contrarian now that he's on Fox Sports 1, and all of a sudden he's being booked on Fox News and Tucker Carlson because, you know, he don't want to call a brother like me because, see, I bring way too much funk.
No question.
And then he's writing for the Wall Street Journal. He talks about how, this was all a money thing and a corporate thing. And see, the problem with that is Jason really has no firm understanding of the history of the black experience. And so he loves quoting Dr. King and holding Dr. King up to be this exemplary figure. But I do recall that the March on Washington initially was called the March on Washington for Freedom. But because the labor unions were paying for it, they said, you got to put jobs in this thing. That's how it became the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Then 1964 in Atlantic City with the Mississippi Democratic Freedom Party, when they wanted to seat that black delegation, that the King initially testified on behalf of that group and Fannie Lou Hamer. But it was President Johnson who said to the labor leader, Walter Reuther, he said, look, you tell King, he said, you put pressure on him and make it clear that if he don't stop and get on our side, you gonna pull his funding. He went to Dr. King. Dr. King realizing that if the funding was pulled by the labor unions, they couldn't fund the movement. So therefore, he went along with the compromise of the Democrats, much to the consternation of those black folks from Mississippi. See, that's corporate influence, Dr. King. But also, I do recall, Jason, in 1964, Dr. King wins the Nobel Peace Prize. And when he comes back to Atlanta, all the white folks in Atlanta say, look, we ain't doing nothing with this black man with the Nobel Peace Prize. Yet, it was the CEO of Coca-Cola who said, let me make it clear, Atlanta's going to put on an event celebrating our own person, winning the Nobel Peace Prize, and all y'all going to show up. And if y'all don't show up, we might move out of Atlanta. Guess what? All them racist white folks showed up at the hotel to celebrate Dr. King. See, that's a corporate America using its influence to change. I think about the anti-apartheid movement, where folks put pressure on companies to divest. Those companies took that decision and impacted apartheid in South Africa. The point I'm trying to make to folks like Jason Whitlock is, look, if you want to come in this arena and talk about news and politics, do me a favor, read a damn book, have an understanding of black history as opposed to this not deeper than a mustard on a hot dog knowledge that you actually have on this. That's the real problem here. And so what Nike is doing is good. Should we call out Nike on other things that we disagree with? Absolutely. But to somehow suggest this was always a money thing for Colin Kaepernick shows you really don't understand what's happening with these black athletes. And what we also understand, Jason, is that when these black athletes, when they use their power to stand up and put pressure on folks, then you're going to see things happen. That's really, Jason, what America really can't stand, is when black folks realize they have power and then start using that power, which is why a brother like me didn't wait for somebody else to give me a show. I decided to own my own. That's why this is Roland Martin Unfiltered. Going to take a break right now. All right, so I'm warning y'all right now, if you're on Twitter, Black Twitter will be taking over tonight when this comes on, just letting you know. And so we'll be chatting with Bobby Brown next Monday right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. See, that's how we do it. All right, final thoughts before we got to go. We way over time, but what the hell? I mean, we own this, so we can do a little.
Right. Good to be back.
This show today is a perfect example of why we need Roland Martin Unfiltered. Every day we need to have a discussion like this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And welcome back. Well, you never left. It's like, you know, you never left. You were still there.
We just had to plan it for.
Right,
we had to get to put some plans together.
That's right. Roland, all I would say is I share this sentiment. I'm glad to be back. Glad that you're back, most importantly. And y'all, please tell your grandmom and them how to work these computers so that everybody can watch.
Right.
Absolutely. So let me give everybody a breakdown. So deal is this here. Roland Martin Unfiltered is going to air every day, 6 p.m. Eastern, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope as well. Now, soon as we hit end, when the show ends, you're going to be able to actually watch this on those same platforms on VOD, video on demand. Now, we're going to restream the show at 10 p.m. Eastern, at 2 a.m. Eastern, at 6 a.m. Eastern, then at 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll be back tomorrow live at 6 p.m. We also will have the audio and the video podcast as well. Let me also tell you about our Bring the Funk fan club, because look, bottom line is this costs money. Sending cars for our guests to come here costs money as well. And so my goal is very simple. I keep saying we've got to fund our own freedom. We've got to have our folks who realize we have a part in this. So we created this Bring the Funk fan club to create charter members, where we asking, our goal is to get over the next year, and I would like for it to be done a lot sooner than in a year, 20,000 of our followers to contribute a minimum of $50 to join our fan club. Now, why is that the case? Because, again, this is about independent. We're going to be taking this show on the road. We're going to be broadcasting from Los Angeles, from New York, broadcasting from different conferences and different events, and we need to be able to not just depend on corporate America and their advertising dollars. And so I'm talking to various companies as we speak, but also I want us to be a part of that. So if you go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com, you can actually join. If you say I can't give 50, fine. You can give $5, $10. It doesn't matter, any amount. But what we really want to do is, again, to get 20,000 of our members. Tomorrow, we're going to start. I'm going to call out everybody who's already signed up to be a charter member. We're going to roll the credits beginning tomorrow. I'm going to name every single person every day of a shout out to those folks who've actually contributed to make this show possible. And so that's what we have lined up. We got a lot of great things lined up for you this week. I've already gotten the confirmation. So on Thursday, Omarosa will be here talking about her book Unhinged. Yes, that shall be an interesting conversation. And then, of course, as I said, Bobby Brown will be here on next Monday. We also, of course, will be talking about Brett Kavanaugh, the hearing on tomorrow. Also, be dealing with a story out of Florida where a couple of black men are missing, and where Tyler Perry has put up $100,000 for a reward for information leading to where those young black men are. We'll be talking about that story as well. Why are we doing this? Very simple. We have been losing our black media voices. Look, my show was canceled by TV One in December of 2017. This was a place where we were able to come and talk about our issues unapologetically, and that I still felt that was needed. A lot of people out there doing podcasts. Well, this is going to be a podcast as well, but I want to do something that was different with this particular show, and that is having it as a live show. We have to control our narrative. We must be in control of what we say and what we do, and covering the stories that you know are not going to get covered on cable news. You know are not going to get covered on broadcast news, and that's one of the reasons why I launched this venture. We've got a great team of people who have been working on this nonstop, folks, for the past 8, 9 months. All of this you see, Henry, give me a wide shot. All of this you see, the control room, this was literally, folks, put together in 2 weeks. Team worked all around the clock making it happen, and so I got to give all of them a shout out. And so we still doing things in terms of changing our look and stuff along those lines. But what this is about is, again, us controlling our destiny and telling our story. And so that's what we're going to do every single day. We want this theme to continue. We want it to flourish. We want to be able to provide other live streaming events. We've been doing that for the past 8 months, so you can see some of that, and also extended interviews. And so, and not just look. And this is not a black Democrat show. This is not a black liberal show. I've already interviewed Kay James, the first black woman to lead the Conservative Heritage Foundation. And so we're going to have that full interview on here as well. We'll be talking to black folks in news and politics and entertainment and fashion and culture, comedy, you name it, because what this is about is us controlling our narrative, telling our story, because I'll rue the day when we have to ask somebody else, can you please tell our story? I'm not interested in his story or her story. I'm interested in our story. We want to thank you for watching this first edition of Roland Martin Unfiltered. Yes, we went 28 minutes over time, but it's all good because guess what? We ain't got dealing with any network drama because we can just keep going if we want to. And so we were supposed to show this at the beginning of the show. Cindy Heron, so I'm going to give y'all the backstory real quick. Cindy Heron and Terry Ellis of En Vogue. When we did News One Now, I asked them to put together a theme song. And then folks said, oh, no, we don't really like it. It sounds outdated. I thought it was funky. And so the opening of the Smithsonian Museum, African American History and Culture, Terry says, we got a gift for you. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, y'all got a gift for me. And so then she said, Cindy and I are going to gift you this song because of what you have done for black people. She says you don't have to pay for it. You can use it however you want to. Slick was the producer of this. And so this video is actually supposed to run at the beginning of the show. We're going to close with this video. But the song you're hearing, the voices of En Vogue members Cindy Heron and Terry Ellis, and this song is produced by Slick. Folks, I shall see you tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Holla!
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling.